Good morning, Amanda here. I'm going to try something a little bit different this morning. It's expanding on the video that I made talking about fear, talking about how I feel like I'm called to continue facing my fears, being fearless. And I want to dive a bit deeper into this fear of being seen, this fear of coming out, stepping out, starting to do things in this more like public way, in this way that where people can access you and see you, see what you're doing. And to do that, I want to try to talk a bit about a podcast episode that I listened to. I'm just devouring everything by Personality Hacker right now. So Joel and Antonia made one episode about our resistances to developing what they call our co-pilot function, which, if you're looking at the Myers-Briggs cognitive functions, is the second function in your stack. I'm not pretending to be an expert here, but I just want to share a bit about my experience with what they talked about in this episode. I'll link it in the comments below if you want to check it out, because I really felt like unknowingly this is what I've been doing. I've been developing this like weaker function of mine, and they talk about how in personal development, developing that like second function is like the most important thing that you can do, and it can actually change your life. And I find that to be very true in my experience. I have personally been, with, like, I grew up with like an extroverted best friend. So I like often thought that I was an extrovert and was doing all of these extroverted things. And so I was kind of forced to be out there developing my FE. But I also was trying to be like her. So in a lot of ways, like I also like suffered because in a lot of ways I kind of wondered like what was wrong with me and why I couldn't be more like other people, because I wasn't like feeling right, like something was off, and so I recognize now that like while in certain ways there like I suffered, I also was able to like develop more, and so I'm also like grateful for that obviously. And like it made me like really come out there in the world and be exploring the world and like traveling in ways that maybe I wouldn't have otherwise. Maybe I wouldn't have risked being seen and going out there, So they talk about for INFJs that secondary function, and like the core fear for INFJs being vulnerability. And so for me, that's what I've been working on, being like super vulnerable, more and more vulnerable, because I realize that's what I'm looking for in other people in the world. And so I'm like, well, if I want other people to be vulnerable, I have to risk being vulnerable publicly, or like at least with more often as well. If I want to find authentic people and like get past like the superficial stuff that was just like frustrating me so much, then I have to be more and more authentic. I have to put myself out there and be vulnerable if I want to see more of that in other people. And so that's what these videos are. That's what, like, I started by doing like podcasts. Add a little thing like this, podcasts called Messages of a Bilingual Heart. You can check it out here, where it was really just like the beginning of trying to trying to start being seen, trying to start making something. And it has been like this really slow, like painful climb. And my intention was never really to start making videos like this. I didn't, and I never imagined that I'd be starting to focus more on like Myers-Briggs and like specifically like INFJ stuff. But it's just kind of going in that direction. And I'm just following things kind of step by step. But now, like, I realize, yes, I have been working on developing my FE, with what they nickname it, harmony. I've been working on developing that, and I have been seeing how it's changing my life and like how it's making me feel so much better. How it does help you feel more like they say, like a well-rounded person. And in my experience, that's what it really feels like. But in terms of the fear itself, like that resistance to working on that, absolutely felt that. Like, that vulnerability, because I think as an INFJ, you feel everything so intensely. Like, you feel your own stuff, but not even only your own stuff. You feel other people, like you feel other people's stuff, especially. And I've always been pretty, like I don't like starting to talk like I'm talking for everybody, but for me, I'm already super hard on myself. I'm already like really perfectionist, and I'm always like expecting so much from myself, that when I get criticism, oftentimes it's already like criticism that I have already given myself. So when I hear it again from somebody else, I'm just like, oh yeah, I already know, I already know that like I suck at that, or like I want that to be better. I already know. So like when it comes to criticism, it's like I'm already my own worst critic. So hearing criticism from others, like, it just like doesn't help as well. And they talk about that, about like exposing yourself to criticism, exposing yourself because you're like a pretty private person. That's how it is for me too. I was like avoiding social media for a really long time because I've just found it creepy. I don't want other people to know my business or my stuff, and now here I am like talking about pretty personal, like inside my head things on YouTube for strangers to see. But I've pushed myself to get here, and I never would have imagined myself getting here. But like they say, like developing this thing, working on this thing, I think it is rewarding, and I think it will continue to be rewarding and lead me to like more of that authenticity, more of that freedom that I'm looking for, that I've been craving, and like more self-confidence and just more of that like connection to purpose. And that all comes from that first step of being fearless and just trying new things, even though you don't really know what you're doing, and just trying to like, just exposing yourself and trying to put yourself out there, even though it's scary, even though you don't know how it's gonna go. Sometimes you can be surprised by yourself, and the more that you keep doing it, obviously it's practice. The more you get better, and the more you explore, the more you realize like what you want to do, what you don't want to do, what you enjoy. Like for some reason I'm really enjoying making these videos right now. I like connecting. Like I watched a video from another like INFJ who talked about, this kind of community on Facebook and Facebook on YouTube. And I think that is really cool. Like I'm discovering more YouTubers that are talking about like INFJ things, and I'm really enjoying that. And those folks at Personality Hacker talk about just like how their podcast is like is like intuitive porn, which I thought is pretty funny because, just like with a lot of YouTube videos, I'm often, you often see the like, okay, number one is this, number two is this, number three is this. It's very like structured and like super planned out. And so I often feel like, oh, well, I have to do that because, I do appreciate that sometimes when I want like, okay, what's the answer? And then you like skip to those numbers and you can just like know quickly like, okay, that's how you do that. That's how you get that done. But at the same time, like building something like that for me doesn't feel, and I think it's that intuitive piece, like it's nice to be able to just have this like flowing conversation and just letting your ideas bounce around. And again, as I always say, like just like trusting your heart and trusting yourself to wander around and find those like numbers, number one, number two, number three, but in a less like direct way and with more like speculation and less like this is how it's done and more like, this is my experience and this is what I've observed and like, what do you think, And that just like feels more real to me. And in a way, like I feel like like it's wrong, like other like, like, oh, this isn't efficient. But I think that's programming too, that's just because that's what we see so often. And at the same time, I'm still loving this idea of like an intuitive kind of movement, which I still need to look into some more. But if we want more of that intuitive porn or that intuitive like content, like we intuitives have to make it, and we are making it, and that's why I'm loving seeing what other creators are making, because that's that intuitive content that I'm looking for, that I've been looking for so long, and I just didn't know where it was or how to find it. And so for me, this is like really exciting. Like I'm finding this kind of stuff that like I'm actually connecting with, which, I always remember people being like, oh, this is my favorite band or my favorite book or this or that. And I don't know, I was never like a fan of anything because I just couldn't, I never found anything that I really, really connected with. And now I'm starting to feel more like, like, oh, my role models are more like these INFJ creators or like things like that, because I'm actually connecting with the content. And it's so cool. So anyway, I'm gonna cut this because it's getting a bit long, but I just wanted to share more on that because I mentioned like being seen in my last video, but I didn't go into that, how that fear has been for me, and so I just wanted to expand on it because it wasn't what I was looking to say last time. So it was a retry. Okay, I'm cutting this now. So see you later. Thanks for commenting. Thanks for being there. It's fun, and I appreciate having this outlet and this way of connecting with others who are on this. I love this last comment that I got, on this same highway but in different lanes. Okay, thanks. Take care, everyone.